on a yearly basis. Out of 20, they are asking 6-7 type of questions, right? International relations section, there are 6 questions. 2 are from the bilateral relations. On this side, on the western side, it is Pakistan. On the eastern side, it is China. देखो इतनी सारी चीज तो obviously you will not be able to write. कोई भी 3 से 4 point with substantiation, pick and write. It is the largest democracy of the world, leading the largest population. Limitations at India's end. क्या limitations हैं? First thing is by the stability, not stability, but the external environment. So on one side we are having Pakistan, on the other side we are having China. So we can talk about the border issues. Now we have to address the central theme. The central theme is to some extent the Indian diaspora. Good morning everyone. I hope that all of you are doing good. So last time when we met, we had discussed the history related section, right? So in today's discussion, we are going to cover the 2023 GS paper 2 international relations section. There are total 6 questions that we are going to discuss in the today's discussion, right? So in the UPPCS in GS paper 2, there is a prominent section of international relations, and roughly on a yearly basis, out of 20, they are asking 6-7 type of questions, right? The importance of this particular section is that this section is comparatively easy if you are aware with at least basics of the international relations, right? And in that particular sense, this appears to be a bit low hanging fruit. What do I mean by that? So basically, when we are writing the answers of the GS papers, specifically addressing the demand of the question is very, very important. Thank you. So in that particular sense, in the international relations, the nature of question that are asked is in such a way that is easy to understand, easy to interpret, and you will be having certain pointers to write definitely about those particular questions. The problem comes with the GS paper 2 international relations section is that when we are writing the answer, the pointers has to be substantiated with certain data, fact, examples. If you are not backing the fact, data, example, and you are not doing the value addition in your answer, in those cases what is going to happen, that it will appear a bit generalistic. So वो होता है ना कि we know that the चाय पे चर्चा जो होती है, and in that sense it will not appear good from the perspective of a candidate who is sincere about the international relations as a subject. Because tomorrow when you are going to appear, when you are going to like get selected, and let's say if we talk about UPSC also, this is the kind of advice that we have to substantiate whatever arguments we are putting forward, right? Now analyzing the GS paper 2, there are total 6 questions that we are going to discuss today. The topics which were asked specifically in international relations section, there are 6 questions. 2 were from the bilateral relations, right? And 4 were pertaining to either multilateralism or there are the regional groupings, right? So in the context of regional groupings, all the multilateral organization, for example, question about Quad, question about the SARC vis-a-vis BIMSTEC, like this question, they are easy to answer, but then there has to be certain fact data in order to substantiate your argument. Clear? Okay, so let's start with the first question that we have to discuss. This is the, I think, question number 8 marks question. 125 word is the word limit. Now as we were discussing with respect to the history section, we will follow the similar type of approach here also, where we are going to first talk about what might be the pointers that you can include in your answer. Having discussed about that, then we are going to see what are the important things which you could have included further, right? Now let's start with this question. The failure of SARC, किसके बारे में बात कर रहे हैं? Failure of SARC forced India to strengthen BIMSTEC. Explain. That means this question is asking about the comparative analysis. Comparative analysis about what? Comparative analysis of SARC vis-a-vis BIMSTEC. Now, the question itself is saying that there has been failure of SARC that has been observed. Now, why there has been failure of SARC? Because there is a rivalry that is observed between India and Pakistan. And there are certain provisions within the SARC grouping which are not allowing it to function properly to resolve dispute amicably, because the contentious disputes cannot be taken forward in the SARC as a grouping, because it is hindering or it is preventing any of the contentious dispute between two countries that has to be discussed in this particular forum. Now, because of a lot of issues, for example, the incursions from the side of Pakistan, the cross-border terrorism from the side of Pakistan, the terror attacks that we had seen in the context of Pathankot, then we had seen in Uri, we have seen in Pulwama, and recently also in the context of the Pahalgam. But if we talk about, let's say, since when the SARC is dysfunctional, so 2014 was the last summit of SARC. And after that 2016 में जो summit होने वाली थी, in the wake of the Uri attack, that particular summit was suspended. And since then, there has not been any of the summit of SARC. So roughly 11 years have already been passed. That means to some extent the organization has died. It is not at all active, right? Now, when the failure of SARC is there, India had to find certain alternatives, and that particular alternative arrived in the form of BIMSTEC. So you can see that India is putting up a lot of emphasis on the BIMSTEC because the SARC is not able to function. Now, when we have to address this particular answer, first we have to talk about that since this question is asking about the failure of SARC forced to strengthen BIMSTEC. That means to some extent we can talk about both the organizations briefly, we can talk about the nature of organizations briefly, we can either talk about the inception. For example, when we have to discuss about the central theme, so this particular central theme is, we can say, SARC and BIMSTEC, right? So you can briefly talk about that the SARC is the regional organization of which particular region? It talks about the South Asia. And when we talk about BIMSTEC, it is the convergence between the South and Southeast Asia. That means to some extent it is complementarity also, right? So it is talking about the South Asia, the 8 countries of South Asia, the subcontinent region are part of the SARC, right? Since the organization has not yet been dissolved, that means the organization is in existence but function nahi kar raha hai. When it was formed, 1985 was the time period jab this particular organization was formed. Now, with respect to the BIMS and why this particular organization was formed, in order to ensure the South Asian regional cooperation, right? Regional cooperation in economic domain, political domain, and other domain, right? Now, when we talk about BIMSTEC, it is comparatively formed at the later stage in 1997 through the Bangkok Declaration. SARC was formed through the Dhaka Declaration, right? So, Bangkok Declaration mein they have formed an organization jahan pe initially there were 4 member countries which are BIST, which includes the Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Then later on Myanmar got included, and then the Nepal and Bhutan got included. So, it is a grouping of 7 member countries. Briefly, you have talked about these, right? 3 line mein max you can write about this, that the BIMSARC is South Asian Regional Organization formed in 1985 through Dhaka Declaration, while the BIMSTEC is the convergence between the South and the Southeast Asian Regional Organization formed in 1997 through Bangkok Declaration. Now, there are 2 parts to this question. If we talk about, दोनों part बहुत briefly हमें address करना है. Failure of SARC forced to strengthening of BIMSTEC. Why SARC failed? क्या ऐसे reasons थे जिस वजह से we can say that to some extent SARC was not able to perform the task that was being provided. Now, when we talk about the, and हम like see arrange in the answer, you can arrange like, you can first talk about the failures of what? Of SARC, and then need for alternative, means strengthening of alternative organization. Now, why there was failure of SARC? First obvious reason is India-Pakistan rivalry. Why there is rivalry? We already know that there are a lot of disputes, there are territorial disputes, there are cross-border terrorism related issues that is pertaining from the side of Pakistan towards India. cross-border infiltration is there. We have seen a lot of disputes regarding that, right? So first issue is India-Pakistan rivalry, and to substantiate, you can talk about the Uri, you can talk about Pulwama, you can talk about the Pahalgam terror attack. But obviously, Uri was the substantial one because उसके बाद summit ही नहीं हुई. And after that, the attack that had happened, that shows कि भाई reconciliation भी, it is very very difficult. Next, when we talk about the SARC में ऐसी क्या difficulties थी? What were the major difficulties with SARC that it was not able to lift up properly? So another thing is कि जो organization बनाया गया था, that organization was initially formed in order to contain India. That means the countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, they came together, they wanted to form an organization in order to contain India. Now, जिस organization का objective ही है contain करना India को, in that case, do you think that this organization is going to go for better regional cooperation, including India? However, when we talk about in terms of population, roughly 80% से ज़्यादा is India. In terms of economy, again the majority section is from India, right? So in that case, you can't do the things without the taking into consideration the aspects of India. Now, so we can also talk about the formation ideology of group as counter India. Okay, you can talk about this here or you can talk about this later also. Next is, now SARC function कैसे करता है? The principle of SARC is based upon unanimity. Means, suppose करो, if there are 8 countries, out of 8, 7 agrees on a developmental project. 8 countries says कि नहीं, we do not want to go forward. That developmental project will never take off. Why? Because simply it is based upon the consensus till the point of time all the countries are not agreeing. And that's why a lot of developmental projects from SARC, whether it is the satellite project, whether it is about the security related architecture, all of these things were not able to take off because Pakistan always boycotted. So you can talk about the unanimity principle and Pakistan veto. So this is another thing that the Pakistan is vetoing if there is any type of project that is trying to take off. Another thing is कि, as I've already talked, that this grouping talks about कि भाई this is a region which is having a lot of conflict. So in a regional organization, if we are going to include the bilateral dispute, then the chances are very very high that वो bilateral dispute regional organization को function नहीं करने देंगे. They will not allow regional organization to function. And that's why what they were doing is कि in this particular organization, they have excluded the bilateral contentious issues. So exclusion of bilateral contentious issues, right? Now in this particular case, problem sorry. So the problem with this particular aspect is that when we are excluding this bilateral contentious aspects in an organization, do you think that the region which is having a lot of issues, in that particular case this organization is going to function properly, right? So जो issues है वो हमेशा issues ही रहेंगे and these particular issues are not going to be resolved properly, right? So this is there. Apart from that, why the regional cooperation happens? So one such aspect of the regional cooperation is ensuring to some extent the economic aspects also. Now when we talk about the economic aspects or economic collaboration in this particular organization, when we see the economic collaboration, it is lack of economic collaboration, because problem with that is कि पाकिस्तान का मेन फोकस है चाइना. Pakistan's over dependency on China. India is trying to diversify the actors and other countries are not that much substantial. So उस problem में क्या होता है that these countries के बीच का आपस का trade जो intra SARC trade है, intra-SARC trade is somewhere around like less than 5% of their total trade. That means कैसे organization take off करेगा, because there is no such economic related collaboration that is there between the countries, right? So that's why this organization is failing to perform its role properly, and that's why India had to look for the alternative. So that's why India also strengthened the aspect related to the BIMSTEC. So you will see there is now the secretariat of BIMSTEC also, there is also the charter of BIMSTEC, and along with that India is focusing upon this particular grouping, right? Why? Because there is no availability of the SAARC as the organization in order to ensure regional solidarity, and that's why BIMSTEC provides India support towards its Act East policy also. So why there is a need for BIMSTEC? Because there is clear-cut exclusion of Pakistan. So there is no Pakistan in this organization. That means to some extent, without any contention, this particular organization can now function. Next, when we talk about this particular organization, it is providing the convergence between the South and Southeast Asia. That means kahin na kahin on a lot of issues there is a convergence between the South and Southeast Asia. So it is not only talk about the South Asian regional solidarity, it is also going to support the Act East policy. So basically India ka Act East policy, okay, which was launched since 2014 onwards. Apart from that, when we talk about this organization, यहाँ पर economic collaboration was very, very less. Though there was SAFTA, SAFTA, the free trade organization within the SAARC countries, but still after that also there was no such major changes observed. But when we talk about the trade between the Southeast Asian countries and India, in that particular case, there are countries like Singapore, there are countries like Malaysia, जिनके साथ India is having a large amount of trade. And along with that, when we talk about as an organization or grouping, it is one of the largest trade partner of India. That means kahin na kahin, whatever issues were there which were being faced by India in the SAARC, those issues are now getting resolved. Along with that, now right now the policy focus of India is the Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific के लिए, which will be the anchor? It is the Southeast Asian country, and that's why there is a very important role of the organization like BRICS, which is going to help in order to resolve the dispute. Now, in the end, in the conclusion, what you can write that, see, despite the failure of SAARC, there is the collaboration from the side of India with the like-minded countries, including the Nepal, Bhutan, including Afghanistan, including Sri Lanka, including Maldives, in order to prevent the roadblocks in the form of Pakistan and providing the regional solidarities and the India-led regionalism. Okay, so kahin na kahin you can talk about this, that India is still leading the regionalism in its own way. Okay, so these are the pointers you can write in your answer. So these are the pointers: India-Pakistan rivalry, unanimity rule, exclusion of the bilateral issues, limited economic engagement. And when we talk about the strategic pivot to BIMSTEC, exclusion of Pakistan, strategic importance to India, apart from that economic cooperation, right, Act East policy, all these things you can talk about. Next question, question number, this must be 9th question, right? So the question says, explain the rationale behind the India's involvement in Quad. So behind the India's involvement in Quad, that means which organization is being focused upon? It is the Quad organization. What is exactly Quad? Any idea regarding the organizations like Quad? So it is basically a plurilateral organization. What exactly is a plurilateral organization? The organization जहाँ पर more 3 या 3 से ज़्यादा countries available हैं, that may be considered as the multilateral or the plurilateral organization, and these countries are coming together in order to resolve the common dispute. Now, दो से ज़्यादा countries हैं, and that's why we have talked that it is a plurilateral organization. It is also known as the quadrilateral security dialogue. Quadrilateral dialogue या quadrilateral security dialogue, that's why it is also known as the Quad. Now, when it was formed, so see, there is no such single date attached to the formation of Quad. It was an organization that was formed through evolution. कैसे? We know that 2004 में there was tsunami in the Indian Ocean region, right? Or Indo-Pacific we can say, but specifically towards the Indian Ocean region, and that's why 2004 में when there was tsunami, Now, after that particular tsunami, in order to do the reconstruction, rebuilding, development, so these countries, 4 countries came together, which include the country like India, country like Australia, country like US, and country like Japan. So these countries came together and they provided the reconstruction, rehabilitation and the other support. अभी तक ऐसा कुछ organization form नहीं हुआ है. Then in 2007, the former Japanese Prime Minister, late Shinzo Abe, he talked about that this particular pivot जो हो रहा है with respect to the Indian Ocean region and the Indo-Pacific region, that is a grouping of the 4 country जो कि एक future हो सकता है with respect to the Indo-Pacific. So Shinzo Abe had given a construct of Quad. Now 2007 to 2017, there was not much collaboration between the countries, right? Now 2017 mein there was a major event because of which the countries started coming together, because there was the issue at Doklam. So Doklam is the plateau region in the Bhutan's territory, and where the China was doing the aggression, and in response to that particular aggression, what India had done, India had provided the support to the Bhutanese territory, and that's why the Doklam crisis ke baad India became an active partner. Because see, out of these 4 countries, it is only India जो कि China के साथ border share करती है, the land border, right? And also, to some extent, this particular organization talks about the open, free, fair, regional maritime order in Indo-Pacific. So when this particular organization talks about the free, open, fair regional order or the regional maritime order in the Indo-Pacific, that means these particular countries का साथ आना बनता है. These countries also started doing the exercise from here, like the Malabar exercise. So through that also the defense domain में cooperation started. Then these particular countries के बीच में convergence भी बढ़ा. For example, between India and Japan, there was signing of the economic agreement. With India and US, there has been the diaspora and the many other relation with Australia also. Previously, Australia used to be a lot of intermingled with China, but then Australia also realized that the China is disrupting the order in the Indo-Pacific. That's why there was convergence, and since 2017 onwards, these countries came together, and that is generally known as Quad 2.0. और यहाँ से initially the Minister of External Affairs, and then later on at the head of the state level also the Prime Minister or the head of the states are meeting, and then they are doing the discussion. So that's why the Quad is an important organization. इनमें से थोड़ा सा आप लिख सकते हो in the introduction of Quad. That means you have to address the aspect regarding the Quad in the introduction of the question. Now, when you have to talk about explain the rationale behind India's involvement in Quad, that means why India have joined Quad, what type of benefits India is getting by joining the Quad. That means you have to address this particular aspect. Now, when we talk about the India's rationale, you have to explain the rationale. That means obviously you may talk about that there may be in future certain issues because of the Quad में India का participation, right? Now, the first rationale is the rise of the Indo-Pacific in Indian foreign policy. There was a rise of the Indo-Pacific in the Indian foreign policy. For example, you have seen the construct of Sagar, which is security and growth for all the region. Then you have talked about the policies like Act East. You have talked about already the policies like this Sagar later on became abhi bahut recently Mahasagar. Right. इसके अलावा there was Project Mosam for the cultural collaboration in the countries, right? Along with that, India is acting as the first responder. Now, when India is acting like all these, that means India के foreign policy में this particular Indo-Pacific is gaining a lot of prominence, right? And that's why when Indo-Pacific is coming in the focus, that's why you can talk about that the India के लिए ये beneficial in order to take participation in Quad. Next is in the last question also we have talked about that the Act East policy, which was the evolution of your Look East policy. So Look East था 1990, 192 onwards, and this particular Act East policy was started from 2014 onwards to give more agileness in this particular domain of the eastern countries that India is having, or the Southeast Asian countries that India is having. Initially the focus was mainly towards the Southeast Asia, but now it is even to the East Asia. That includes the countries like China also, Japan also, South Korea also, and the other far eastern countries. And that's why the policy focus has increased, and that's why India wanted a group that is going to ensure the projection of the India's power in that particular domain. Next is, you can talk about the defense cooperation. Now India is already having the issues with multiple countries. On this side, on the western side it is Pakistan, on the eastern side it is China. China का हम एक अलग point with respect to the China we will write, but defense cooperation में now these particular countries, for example with United States we are having the agreements like US के साथ कौन से agreements हैं? LEMOA was signed in 2016. Then COMCASA, which is for the communication and compatibility related aspects. Then the basic exchange of cooperation agreement, BICA, right? So this is for the logistics, this is for the secure communication, this is for the exchange of communication related aspects, right? So all these are the things that were possible जब confidence बढ़ा countries के बीच में, and that confidence was boosted because the countries के बीच में जो complementarity थी that was also increasing, and that's why the Quad was one such thing. इसके अलावा you can also write regarding the Japan, you can also write regarding the Australia with which India is collaborating. Japan के साथ India is going for the Asia Africa growth corridor, right? With Australia we are doing the critical minerals related partnership, and that's why they are supporting with respect to the India's defense related cooperation. Then we can talk about the China's rise and disruption in regional order. That's why also Quad के लिए India ज़्यादा तैयार हुआ. For example, there was crisis at Doklam, there was Galwan Valley crisis, then there are certain other crises, for example South China Sea. There is issue with respect to the rare earth element. Clear, right? So this is regarding the the China and the associated aspects. Now Quad is not only about defense, so Quad is including a lot of other cooperation. For example, you can talk about the diverse areas of cooperation. For example, there is the Supply Chain Resilience Initiative, SCRI, that is between the Quad countries, that is ensuring the supply chain availability of the major things which are very very important from the perspective of the growth in future, right? Apart from that, they are also collaborating on the sectors like health, they are collaborating on the sectors like communication, because there are a radio access network related agreement that is there. They are also talking about the renewable energy or the green energy related sources, right? That means it's not only talking about the defense related aspect, it is talking about the diverse ways in which the countries are collaborating, and that's why that particular thing is here. Iske alawa, you can also talk about the rise of bilateral cooperation. देखो इतनी सारी चीज तो ऑब्वियसली यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू राइट, कोई भी 3 से 4 पॉइंट विद सब्सटेंशिएशन पिक एंड राइट. राइज ऑफ द बाइलेटरल रिलेशंस, again you can talk about with US, with Australia, with Japan, what has been the recent developments, you can quote about that, right? Apart from that, you can talk about even the economic cooperation. So bilateral mein hi you can also specifically talk about the economic cooperation also. So these are certain things which are very very important from the perspective of the India's collaboration and cooperation with the Quad countries. Clear? Now the answer does not end over here. In the last part or the second last paragraph of the question, or maybe in the form of the pointers, you can talk about that what are the challenges that are there. Because see, when we talk about Quad, the other countries are distant. Japan eastern side ho gaya, then Australia comparatively southern side, US completely different theater, but it is only India which is having the border with China. So when this particular organization is posing its stand against China, then obviously it is going to impact the India's relations with China. And that's why there is a issue. So when we talk about the issues, you can bring about briefly, not in elaborated manner, you can talk about the India and China border issues. इसके अलावा you can talk about the recent India-US conflict, that US can't be considered as a reliable partner because of the reciprocal tariff and other issues that were there, for example secondary sanctions. तो ये सारी चीजें चल रही हैं with respect to the United States. Along with that, if you have to talk about that, what are the other issues that the US want mainly to convert it into a defense related agreement, and जब US ये नहीं कर पाया, so what they have formed AUKUS, UK, US. So Australia, UK and US AUKUS they have formed in 2021-22 in order to ensure the nuclear related cooperation between countries, right? So these are the issues. What India wants exactly, India wants a flexible approach कि भाई you should not force us, because whatever we are doing we are keeping in mind the strategic autonomy, and that's why it is impacting the India's flexible approach. Along with that, इंडिया का जो रिलेशन है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द कंट्रीज लाइक ईरान, कंट्रीज लाइक रशिया, द कंट्रीज लाइक चाइना इज डिफरेंट. With respect to Russia, we are having the bonhomie, and when we are talking about, let's say, too much emphasis on Quad, that means straining the relation with these countries, and that is going to impact. And right now we are seeing those things, right? That's why in the conclusion you have to talk about that the regional collaboration based upon the strategic autonomy that India is trying to balance. However, there is a need to ensure the strategically calibrated strategy in order to ensure the neutrality, not neutrality, in order to ensure the strategic autonomy in the international domain. However, and the Quad can be the vehicle in order to achieve that objective. मतलब कहीं ना कहीं Quad can be utilized as a vehicle for certain limited engagement related approach, right? So these are the things that you can talk about in the answer. Now ऐसा नहीं कि सारी चीज, कुछ चीजें लेके you can write India's active engagement in Indo-Pacific, Act East को boost करना, defense related engagements, diverse areas of cooperation, bilateral cooperation, economic advantage because the countries are comparatively developed other countries, right? India की concern क्या है? Reactivating tensions with China, flexible approach, impact on other partner China, and then not exactly China because China we have addressed, so Russia and Iran you can talk about. Flexible approach में India के बारे में you can talk about that India is following the strategic autonomy based approach, and that's why it is very very important in order to understand the strategic autonomy wala aspect of India. The next question is question number 10. What is the significance of the India's presidency in the G20 discuss? So the significances की बात करनी है. Now see, this was 2023 का question. At that point of time पे it could have been expected because 2023 का पेपर था and 2023 में India hosted the G20 summit की presidentship. It was for the first time that the India was presiding the G20 summit. Now what is G20 exactly? So I have also recorded one video. It will be available I think in 1 or 2 days. So basically G20 is a grouping. So जो ये G20 है, this G20 is basically a grouping between the 19 countries plus now there are 2 regional organizations. So it is also sometimes known as the organization of crisis because crisis में evolve हुआ ये organization. 1998-9 में जब financial crisis चल रहे थे with respect to the Southeast Asian countries and other East Asian countries, at that point of time पे the countries started collaborating in order to remove that obstacle of the economic cooperation. Then once that had happened, then 2007 में again global financial crisis were there. At that point of time it became the head of the state level का summit कि भाई prime minister and presidents of the country are started taking participation, because उसके पहले it was generally the reserve bank के governors and the finance ministers those who were taking participation in these particular summits. So that means the prestige of this organization increased. Now this organization is not only talking about the economy, this is talking about the political solution, it is talking about the strategic solution, sustainable development, economic development, environmental development, right? So holistic focus hai of this organization. Now This organization के बारे में if I give you a brief idea that this organization is based upon the policy of troika. मतलब there are 3 member countries जो generally जो एक troika या फिर एक elite group form करते हैं and that is rotating. For example, the presidency is rotating. So for example, जैसे इंडिया है, इंडिया के पहले it was Indonesia who presided. When India presided, so India के बाद it was the not South Africa, it was Brazil. So this formed the troika, means the past president, present, I'm talking about 2023, right? This was the troika of 2023 and the future. So पास्ट वाला डिस्कस करेगा कि भाई हमने क्या क्या डिस्कस किया था इन द समिट, सो द प्रेजेंट समिट में भी उसके अप्रेजल के बारे में डिस्कस किया जा सके इन द फ्यूचर को इट विल पास द मेंबरशिप. सो व्हेन द ब्राजील हैड प्रिसाइडेड द सेशन, द ट्रोइका इंक्लूडेड इंडिया, ब्राजील एंड साउथ अफ्रीका, राइट. अब साउथ अफ्रीका के बाद रिसेंटली साउथ अफ्रीका में समिट हुआ एंड द नेक्स्ट समिट इज गोइंग टू बी इन यूएस, राइट. सो लाइक दिस देयर इज ट्रोइका, दिस इज द गवर्निंग बॉडी बिकॉज देयर इज नो सच थिंग लाइक सेक्रेटेरिएट एज फार एज the G20 is concerned. Now, talking about the 2023 summit, so India presided 2023 का summit and the summit का theme was Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, means the entire universe is one family, entire earth is one family, right? So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Now talking about the importance of this type of summit, that means India is at the apex level only, it is showing that there is an inclusivity that is going to be the prime focus of this entire grouping, right? And that's why the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has been kept as the focus or the theme of this particular summit. Now talking about what are the significances, it has already been done. Now we can talk about what exactly were the major breakthrough of this particular summit. So the first thing is, it was for the first time India was presiding, and when India is presiding, that means the global leaders are going to come to India. So they came to India. There was entire 2 to 3 days summit, and that particular summit highlighted the prestige and the power of India. So that was the rise of the geopolitical prestige of India, right? So this has increased the India ka prestige at the global level. Now, what type of thought process that India had taken? India had taken the approach of consensus building. That means ensuring that there should not be any major conflict that arises, and that's why the result of that is that the New Delhi declaration, jo after the G20 summit had taken place, that was accepted by the member countries. It was not anything was not removed from that particular New Delhi declaration. Okay. So one such thing is the rise of the geopolitical prestige of India. It showed that India can also host the summits like this. India is ready to take up the charge of the major power across the world. Second, you can talk about that already India is pitching for the reform with respect to the multilateral organization. For example, you know, there is United Nations, there is WTO, there is IMF, right? So reforms at multilateral institutions was being promoted. That means कि India wants that if the global governance is going on, it should be shared benefit that should be available for all. For example, when we talk about the countries like, let's say, the India, countries like Japan, countries like Germany, they are major economic power, but they are not getting representation at the global stage in the form of the UNSC. So they have talked about कि भाई UNSC को भी reform करो. You have to reform the IMF also, you have to reform World Bank also, because right now these organizations are being dominated by only a few countries, and unme se bhi certain countries, for example France and UK, they are not that major power, and hence it is important in order to ensure the reform to make these organizations again relevant. Otherwise there are very high chances that this can become irrelevant also. The third is that we already know that there are certain regions which are not that much developed, and generally there is a trend that countries are collectively known as the countries of global south. So in this particular summit, there was a specific focus on the countries of global south, and the African Union has been included in the organization. That means this is a major breakthrough because India का जो objective था in order to ensure inclusivity, in order to ensure the representativeness and the inclusion of African Union in the summit that had held in India is a major breakthrough because India here is talking about the championing the cause of the global South. So it had reflected that also. Cause of global South. The next point you can talk about that, see, in the case of India, the focus was kept not only on the economic development, it has focused upon the holistic development. So, holistic development was focus. So, basically, whether you talk about the sustainable development goal, whether you talk about the debt sustainability, whether you talk about the climate change, whether you talk about global warming, all these things featured in the discussion when there was discussion going on regarding the discussion of G20 summit. इसके अलावा since the theme was the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that means the inclusivity has to be part of this, and this was included by India कि भाई inclusivity has to be kept at the apex level whenever we are talking about the organization collectively. So next you can talk about the promotion of the Indian model of governance based upon the inclusivity and collectivity. So like this you can talk about. So see, obviously this particular question will now not repeat because G20 had already happened in India 2023 में, अब नहीं आएगा. But the point is that if there is any major summit, for example recently अभी G20 summit इस साल कहाँ पर हुआ? In the case of this year it was in South Africa. And why it was important? Because the United States के president ने boycott किया इसे, and they said कि we are not going to even invite in the next year South Africa in the G20 summit. So that means कहीं ना कहीं the organization is there in news, and if the organization is there in news, you have to have a detailed idea. For example, जब BRICS का summit होता है, there may be question about BRICS. Whenever there is the important thing, for example, new member has been included recently in the ASEAN. So ASEAN summit के बारे में question आ सकता है. So have a brief idea about this. At least 3 से 4 point should be readied with you in order to ensure that if there is a need for substantiation, you should be in the position to substantiate your argument. So in the end, you can talk about that this particular summit reflected the India's leadership qualities along with the Indian model of development, which put forth the India's traditional, cultural, and the civilizational values, keeping the challenges of the global community in mind. So like this, you can give a way ahead in the futuristic tone. Okay. Next question is, okay. So like this, see, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, global leadership, multilateral reform, African Union, development focus, developmental model, right? Next is India is ready for the world leadership. Analyze this comment. So see, the question which can be asked in multiple type. For example, अगर ये question change करके आ जाता कि there is a dire need in order to ensure the reform at UNSC, तो भी आप सिमिलर आंसर लिखते. व्हाई? बिकॉज इंडिया इज रेडी फॉर वर्ल्ड लीडरशिप. दैट मीन्स यू हैव टॉक अबाउट द credentials of India as major power. That means you have to give an idea कि भाई कैसे इंडिया एक मेजर पावर है. यू हैव टू substantiate those particular credentials. क्लियर है? सो जब आप बात करोगे इन credentials की, then you have to talk about that why India is ready for the world leadership. So you have to give the reasons, right? अब ये सेम रीजंस चलेंगे विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द यूएनएससी मेंबरशिप. दिस इज ऑल्सो फॉर द ग्लोबल लीडरशिप. This also reflects about India-led world order. right? So like this questions with similar type के things will be there. Now when we have to talk about that India is ready for the world leadership, there may be certain type of, because this is the central theme and you have to talk about certain credentials. Now what can be that particular credentials? That credentials is the population, that credential is economy, that credential is sustainable model, that credential is leadership of global south. So these things briefly can be talked about in the introduction. The introduction can be focusing upon that with the largest population, roughly $1.4 billion, the fourth largest economy, the leading country in the sustainable development goal, along with achieving the major targets, including the 50% of the energy generation from the from the non-fossil fuel based sources, highlights India's risen place at the global fora. तो ये सारी चीजें आप डाल सकते हो इन द इंट्रोडक्शन. नाउ हाउ इंडिया इज रेडी, सो यहां पर आपको अब पॉइंटर्स देना पड़ेंगे, राइट? यू हैव टू टॉक अबाउट द थिंग्स कि भाई व्हाट आर द क्रेडेंशियल दैट इंडिया इज राइट नाउ हैविंग. So what are those credentials? First is the largest democracy. Large since 1947, since India got independent, it was able to keep its democratic credentials intact. It is the largest democracy of the world, leading the largest population, though there are sometimes issues that were being created, but that issues were amicably resolved. And also along with this, there has been a rise of soft power also. That means kahin na kahin India ki soft power bhi बढ़ी. How that particular soft power has increased? For example, there is yoga. During the time period of COVID issue, there was the vaccine Maitri. India is supporting through the digital infra. There is cuisine. There is culture. All these things are there and that are being recognized also. That means India ki kahin na kahin, when at the global level India is being talked about, so it is very high time that yes, the country should also acknowledge that India is a major power. The next important thing that we can talk about is the economic aspects or economic credentials. Now why I'm talking about this? Because the fourth largest as per GDP criteria, so fourth largest country hai, and as per the purchasing power parity में it is third largest. So purchasing power parity के basis पर भी it is third largest country. It is increasing, it is moving towards the $5 trillion economy. Along with that, we are including the things like the initiatives like SCRI, Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. We are talking about the creating the alternative economic order, focusing or more just as compared to the जो आपका जो order है, that was the Bretton Woods order, right? So that particular things are there. इसके अलावा apart from that, what are the other things? You can talk about the next important aspect that you can talk about. The India is leading the world in many such things. For example, space domain. India is also becoming a major defense hub, right? So in these particular domain, India is right now leading the world. इसके अलावा next you can talk about and space domain, and इसमें you can talk about the Chandrayaan 3. Then India is about to launch Gaganyaan. Then along with that there is Aditya L1. ठीक है, so all these things are there which are showing India's major achievement as far as the space domain is concerned. इसके अलावा when we talk about let's say the technology, चलो technology तो यहाँ पर ही हो गया. The next important thing is the leadership of global south. So India had led the global south. India is working upon supporting the countries, for example, the countries of Africa, the countries of Asia, Southeast Asia, the different other countries. India is collaborating with different countries. So it is becoming the leadership as well as the voice of the global south. इसके अलावा is India part of any specific bloc? नहीं, India is not part. And हाँ, यहाँ पर leadership of global south में you can talk about the African unions, जो last question में discuss किया था, inclusion in G20 in 2023. You can talk about that. Then you can talk about the major counterweight. For example, जब इंडिया की बात करते हैं हम, इंडिया is now becoming a major counterweight. See, it is dealing with Russia also, it is dealing with China also, it is dealing with US also, it is dealing with European Union also, it is dealing with Iran also. So basically it is the global counterweight which is supporting the peaceful global order, peaceful, transparent type of global order. So that is also there. Along with that, if you talk about the human resources domain, so there is a vibrant diaspora. So you can also bring in the aspects of diaspora. So roughly 35.4 million is the Indian diaspora in different countries. Majority of the diaspora is in countries like US, then UK, then Malaysia. Like this, US में ही बात करें तो it is more than 5 million. So this is also helping in order to project the soft power. अच्छा, you can also include the responsible nuclear power. Nuclear power. That is also there. The policies like the credible minimum deterrence, the no first use policy, all these policy talks about that India is not going for anything like just to say something or just disrupt the global order, but India is there to preserve the global order. So all these things are there which talks about that India की credentials क्या है. However, जब हम बात करते हैं that because you have to analyze, तो analyze करने में when we have to achieve all these things, we have achieved certain of these things, and when we are talking about the global leadership, वहां पर we have to also ensure that there are going to be certain issues. और वो जो issues होते हैं when we are dealing with those particular issues, there should be even solution to those. But then right now those issues are pertaining, right? So वो issues क्या क्या हैं that are right now available at the end of India. So limitations भी हैं. Limitations at India's end. क्या limitations हैं? First thing is by the stability, not stability, but the external environment. So on one side we are having Pakistan, on the other side we are having China. So we can talk about the border issues that is causing the depletion of the resources, and along with that the issues that are created because of that. इसके अलावा you can talk about the military and economic. देखो, when we talk about military, still a lot of things are not indigenous. We are relying upon the global countries or the major countries. So the import is still a issue. Though India has started indigenization, but still the fighter aircraft and many other things are mainly imported. Along with that, when we talk about economic, yes, as a country we have comparatively consolidated economic position. But when we talk about the per capita income, it is comparatively less as compared to the developed countries. ठीक है, तो ये एक issue है. Then when we talk about the economic and social issues, economic and social issues, this is also one such issue. For example, we know that there is a issue of poverty, we know that there is a issue of hunger, there is stunting, there is wasting, right? All these issues are there, and still roughly we can say that 70 million plus population is still under the poverty line. That means kahin na kahin it is still a major issue for the country like India, right? Along with that, when we talk about, let's say, the environmental domain mein, because of climate change, the impact of climate change. There is issue to the coastal regions. There is issue to the island regions, right? Along with that, there is issues like, let's say, the pollution, जो कि एक developing country के main issues हैं. So those particular issues are there. Still we are not the having the lacking permanent membership at UNSC. So that is also lacking because only the permanent member at the UNSC level, they are having veto. So जब veto available नहीं है तो majority of the decision making में it is not that the India can do much, right? And when India is not in a position to do much, then obviously there might be certain issues that will be there regarding this. ठीक है? So these are the broader issues that are there that are preventing India to play a major role. Now, obviously in the conclusion, you have to give a way ahead that overcoming this. For example, there are certain schemes you can talk about with respect to addressing the issues like the socio-economic issues, and along with that, there are other issues. For example, like Sustainable Development Goal SDG 1, SDG 2, no poverty, zero hunger. Along with that, India is also focusing upon the gender parity related things. India is focusing on sustainable urbanization. India is pitching through G4 for the permanent membership at the UNSC. India is vocal about the reforms at the different multilateral institutions. India is working with different organizations, including the SCO, BRICS, along with that even Quad, in order to diversify its role. And all these things shows that India is a well-deserving candidate and is ready to take the lead. Because koi bhi country, jab they have taken the leadership, it was not like they were all good in all the spheres. There were obviously certain issues. जब World War II के बाद, when the United States had taken, there was no inclusivity. The blacks were still having the deprivation in their own country, right? So these are certain issues. Along with that, if you have to talk about, you can even focus upon the bureaucratic reforms, because kahin na kahin specialized bureaucracy is also is the need of the time, right? So this is what you can talk about in this answer. So you can say the credentials: largest democracy, soft power, fourth largest economy, crucial counterweight, a responsible voice, nuclear domain में भी include कर सकते, voice of global south, technology, human resources. Then you can talk about the challenges: economic, social issues, military, economic disparity, geopolitical constraint, the Pakistan, China, environmental and the energy related issues, right? Institutional strengthening, the bureaucratic level, right? The lack of permanent UNSC seat. These are certain issues which can be addressed in order to ensure the India's strengthening role at the global fora. Next question. How has Indian diaspora emerged as an asset in the protection of national interest? How Indian diaspora emerged as an asset? The Indian diaspora ko they are comparing as an asset in the protection of the national interest. Now, what are national interests? Ensuring the economic interest, political interest, strategic interest, energy interest. किसी भी डोमेन में एक कंट्री के इंटरेस्ट को इंश्योर करना नेशनल इंटरेस्ट को इंश्योर करने की कैटेगरी में आता है. नाउ which particular region the question is asking specifically for America, so we have to limit our answer concerning America. It has not to be the broader answer which is talking about entire regions mein. It has to be specifically talk about America. Now, talking about this particular answer, now we have to address the central theme. The central theme is to some extent the Indian diaspora, or the role of Indian diaspora. And this particular role of Indian diaspora has to be answered in the body, but the importance has to be shown in the introduction. Now, if I ask you like what is the number of the diaspora at the global level, when we talk about roughly 35.4 million is the Indian diaspora in different countries. When we talk about US, it is roughly 5.2 to 5.4 million. That means you can assume that roughly it is 13 to 14% of the entire diaspora जो कि United States में है. Either they are the person of like Indian origin or having certain roots from India, or the NRIs working in India. Now, why this much number of population of India is residing in US because there has been historical migration post independence also for seeking better opportunities for job. After that there was boom in the IT sector, and that's why in the Silicon Valley and major other places pe, there was a rise of the Indian diaspora, and that's why this is the number of the population. So this is going to give the substantiation to your argument that yes, India ka diaspora itna zyada hai, and that highlights the significance of the diaspora at the Indian Indian diaspora at the US level. Now we have to talk about that how diaspora emerged as an asset to protect the national interest. कैसे protect कर रहा है? What are those particular things? So we have to justify the role. We have to talk about what type of role they are playing. So first important role, देखो, in the US lobbying is legal, means you can go and poach the legislators in order to get the favorable law in your specific favor. So lobbying and the rule making. So there are many such people who are Indian origin. For example, here you can talk about the Kamala Harris, you can talk about the Bobby Jindal. Many other people are there who are basically having the roots from India, and they are Vivek Ramaswamy is there, right? So these people are playing a very important role in their polity. Along with that, if we talk about, so you can here quote about the personalities. Along with this, you can also talk about there are certain favorable laws that were also got. For example, after India did the Pokhran 2 in 1998, there were sanctions, but then there were discussions between the India ka jo private sector and US private sector, and that had resolved a lot of issues, and then eventually the trade ties resumed. And after that, in 2005 onwards, there was the 123 Act, which is also known as the atomic, with respect to the atomic energy related act that has been signed. Now that was also one such thing which was possible through the role or the active intervention of the diaspora. Along with that, there are certain organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, of both the countries that are talking about the resolving of the issues. Along with that, there is US India political councils. They are trying to resolve the disputes, right? So this is the role of the diaspora through lobbying, means active intervention in the policy making. इसके अलावा when you have to talk about, you can give an idea regarding the investments. So it is because of the diaspora, roughly if we talk about after 2000, there is more than $60 billion that had been invested from the side of US to India, and that is basically the role that has been played by the diaspora in the context of ensuring the better relation between the US and India. Okay, so 30 billion plus investments. Next, when the people of India are working in that particular country, or they are the person of Indian origin जिनके कोई relatives हैं India में, they are sending back the money, they are sending back the remittances. So out of India's total remittances, this is based upon the 2022-23 का data, roughly if there was $113 billion का remittances, इसमें से एक लार्ज चंक $35 billion plus has been sent by the people to, मतलब यानी कि roughly 30, मतलब इतना है, roughly you can say $30 billion के around, not 35, $30 billion around remittances that were being sent from the side of US to India. That means again, once there will be remittances, so those particular remittances are going to help the Indian the revenue system, right? Along with that, there will be taxes that will be applied on that. The government is also going to get the revenue. Then the money is coming to India through investment, through the remittances, and that will be utilized for the benefit of India. इसके अलावा you can talk about, let's say, the next you can talk about the डिफेंस. हमने जो क्वाड वाले क्वेश्चन में डिस्कस किया था, डिफेंस रिलेटेड डील्स. सो देयर इज LEMOA, Limoa Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, which is for the logistic related cooperation. There is COMCASA, which is communication compatibility related aspect. Then BICA, which is for secure communication basic exchange cooperation agreement, right? Iske alawa there is the STA1 status, which is generally available for the countries of NATO, right? So strategic जो ट्रेड ऑथोराइजेशन एक्ट 1, उसके अकॉर्डिंगली इंडिया को भी स्टेट मेजर डिफेंस पार्टनर, राइट? सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर देयर. दिस हाईलाइट्स दैट द इंडिया इज gaining prominent role as far as the US की policy is concerned. Then you can talk about when the diaspora is playing important role. This particular thing is reflected in the form of the soft power. So it is also important from the perspective of soft power projection. For example, there is celebration of Diwali at White House. Right. Along with that, a lot of other festivities. There is yoga, there is culture. Then there has been the Indian Bollywood movies. Right, the Bollywood and all these things are there. And along with that, when there is a diaspora related cooperation, the people to people relations. For example, there is the role of the public diplomacy. So for example, when the Prime Minister visits there are, you might have seen, like for example, Madison Square Garden या Howdy Modi type के event जो हुए, that shows that the diaspora is pitching up for the betterment of a relation, and that's what is mean focus upon. So you can talk about the lobbying, you can talk about investment, you can talk about the remittances, defense related deals, soft power projection, along with that the people to people partnership, right? Then the track to diplomacy, all these things are happening because of the diaspora. However, अब देखो, you have to analyze. Diaspora is acting as this. So you have to give an analysis कि in order to promote this, government ने क्या क्या steps लिए हैं. तो government has taken certain steps also. For example, प्रवासी भारतीय बीमा योजना for the insurance related support. Then there is ITEC related cooperation. Then प्रवासी भारतीय दिवस मनाया जाता है, राइट? इसके अलावा इंडिया इज साइनिंग द डील्स एंड द डिस्कशन इन ऑर्डर टू इंश्योर द बेटरमेंट ऑफ द रिलेशन. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, इंडिया थ्रू इट्स पब्लिक डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के थ्रू इंडिया इज supporting, right? So these are certain things that India is doing. Along with that, the cultural promotion through No India program, KIP, right? So No India program, No India program. These are certain things that India is doing. Last May, what I would recommend over here is दो लाइन शुड बी डिवोटेड इफ वी आर टॉकिंग फ्रॉम द प्रेजेंट पर्सपेक्टिव. दिस इज ऑफ 2023. तब इतना कंटेंशन नहीं था, बट राइट नाउ देयर इज इश्यूज. तो व्हाट आर दोस पर्टिकुलर इश्यूज? इश्यूज क्या है? फर्स्ट इशू दैट इज गोइंग ऑन इज द टैरिफ. सेकेंड इशू इज द जियोपॉलिटिकल अलाइनमेंट्स, है ना? एंड थर्ड इज द मल्टीलेटरल institutional reforms. So these are certain present issues जिनको address करना जरूरी है in order to reap the further utilization of the or the further benefits of the diaspora. Because right now these issues are there. There are issues between India and US because of the tariff, H1B visa. Here you can incorporate geopolitical alignment where the US is right now tilted more towards the Pakistan, and then India को obviously India has to then move more towards the Russia. Then the multilateral institutional reform. What US is doing? US is following its own policy. For example, its policy of the America First. It is exiting from various organizations, and as a result, obviously, these organizations are getting weakened, right? And that's why India is talking on the other end regarding the reforms at the global level. So what that reflect, that gives an idea regarding you have also analyzed कि क्या करना जरूरी है in order to make the relation further strengthened, right? Okay. So this is there. 5.2 million US resident, roughly 35 million people, lobbying legislation, US India Political Action Committee, then civil nuclear deal, then the investment technology transfer is there, remittances are there, defense deals are there, soft power projection, people to people ties, the diaspora related engagements, No India program, then Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, Indian Community Welfare Fund, Pravasi Bharatiya Bima Yojana, right? All these are there. इसके अलावा in the conclusion you should be writing regarding present issues and the solution. Clear? So this will make your answer holistic. This is the last question. Indo-Pakistan relations are illusion at present. Matlab, there are issues. There are no much cooperation or collaboration between these two countries, right? So, are illusion at present, that means since history, presently, there has not been such improvement as far as the bilateral relation between these two countries are concerned. Discuss the inherent problems that bitter India-Pakistan relations repeatedly. Means very simple question, very low-hanging fruit for you in the examination. It is simply asking about India और पाकिस्तान के बीच में issues क्या हैं जिस वजह से repeatedly tension होती है. If you have referred any of the time this particular topic through the static material also, you will get to know कि क्या issues है. चलो, if we talk about एक chronological manner में देखते हैं, then you can arrange your answer also. So what is the basic theme or the central theme? It is basically about the India-Pakistan relations. So India-Pakistan relation you can talk about since the independence at 1947, the bloodshed during the partition, along with the Pakistan's inherent anti-India narrative and the rigid emphasis on the Muslim identity that led to the inherent tensions between India and Pakistan, right? So you can talk about the issue of bloodshed during partition, and that basically led to the anti-India, continuous anti-India narrative, and that led to the inherent problem, right? Now why there is repeatedly, why there is continuous issues? First is the ongoing tensions. Since independence, there were 5 war, if we include Operation Sindoor also, proper type of wars. 1948, so we know that there is 48, 65, 71, 99, 2025, right? So 48 में by the tribal invaders, not 48 basically, 47, 48 to be precise. Then 65 में Pakistan initiated conflict even in the run of Kutch region and even in the Kashmir region. 71 में it was basically in the eastern Pakistan region, later created in the form of Bangladesh. It is at the LOC, and here it is in the form of the cross border terrorism. ठीक है? So this is the continuous and the ongoing issue. Second, you can talk about the historical territorial claims. So in the context of the Jammu and Kashmir region, specifically over the Kashmir region, there is a conflict that is going on, right? Along with that, there are issues with respect to the your region of the Kutch, then the बेसिकली आपका जो इंटायर रीजन है वहां पे सर क्रीक, ठीक है, वहां सर क्रीक के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में यू कैन राइट, देन अलोंग विद दैट सियाचिन, right? So these are certain region. Even the Sakshagam Valley was ceded to China. Sakshagam Valley was given to China by Pakistan. This is also one such issue. Along with that, third is the cross border terrorism and infiltration. So we know that the cross-border terrorism has been perpetrated by Pakistan, right? We have seen in different sector at the de facto जो अभी border line है between India and Pakistan, which was named as the LOC after the Shimla Convention of 1972. But since Shimla Convention is right now suspended, so it is just the de facto border line because forces are stationed अभी वहाँ पर. But at the same time, वहां पर there have been the repeated violations of what? Violations of ceasefire. So you can talk about the repeated violations of ceasefire. This is also one such prominent issues, right? Along with that, what is the narrative of Pakistan? See, after 1971, Pakistan realized that in a conventional war, we are not able to defeat India. So they have adopted a new policy, which is bleeding India with 1,000 cuts, means using terrorism as tool of foreign policy. अब यहाँ पर there are organizations like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, then Lashkar-e-Taiba, right? These are the major organizations. Then a constant anti-India narrative. By whom? By the military industrial complex. नॉट इंडस्ट्रियल, पाकिस्तान के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में तो इंडस्ट्रियल रखना ठीक नहीं, मिलिट्री ब्यूरोक्रेटिक कॉम्प्लेक्स, राइट. सो दिस इज ऑल्सो वन सच इशू. अब वो करते क्या है कि मैनी अ टाइम इवन द डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नमेंट इज नॉट एट ऑल अवेयर रिगार्डिंग what type of steps this particular military complex is taking. For example, let's say there was Kargil attack, पता ही नहीं चला उनकी democratic government को, so called democratic government, that there is some kind of attack. Once India highlighted regarding the LOC violations, then only Pakistan thought कि अच्छा ऐसा कुछ हुआ है. So that means repeated issues है. Then next you can talk about the democratic overthrow. So democratic overthrow credibility को impact करता है, right? Next you can talk about the water disputes to Indus Water Treaty. This is also one such issue. So all these things are repeatedly getting generated. इसके अलावा लिखने के लिए बहुत सारे points हैं, a lot of points are there. पाकिस्तान का axis with China and over dependence on China, trying to encircle India. This is also one such issues. So these are certain things that you can talk about, that inherent problem that bitter India Pakistan relations repeatedly, since there is no counterpoint. क्योंकि देखो again यहाँ पर what keyword question is asking, discuss, ठीक है. You can talk about that despite India's effort. कुछ इंडिया ने effort किए. For example, there were effort from the side of, let's say, Lal Bahadur Shastri ji in the form of Tashkent Agreement in 1966. इसके अलावा शिमला in 1972. इसके अलावा लाहौर एग्रीमेंट and the bus related diplomacy in 1999. All these things failed, and in return what we have got in the form of parliament attack. Then 26/11 we have seen, then we had seen Uri, we had seen Pulwama, we have seen the Pahalgam, right? And that's why India कैसे respond कर रही है? India is going for the aggressive military and foreign policy against Pakistan and ensuring the achievement of the India's interest. You can quote in the end regarding the surgical strike what acts India had taken. So this is going to be the last part जहाँ पर आप बताओगे reconciliation efforts. However, despite this, these events had happened, and then what India had responded. This is the things that has to be mentioned in the answer, right? So these are the things: territorial claim, cross-border infiltration and terrorism, asymmetry in the national identities, means कहीं ना कहीं inherent create कर देना लोगों के मन में कि that there is a anti-India narrative. Nuclear dimension, I have not talked about that. Yes, this is also very important though. Why Pakistan has achieved the nuclear related weapons? Because they wanted to get the upper hand over India in that domain, right? Military establishment domain, trust deficit, dialogue breakdown syndrome, यहाँ पर Lahore bus diplomacy and all. You can talk about the alliance and the balancing water dispute. These are certain things that you can talk about. ठीक है? So with this, I have completed 2023. Oh, I was not feeling well, so that's why we limited to 2023 only today. And then in the next set of discussion that we might be taking in the next week, I'll be covering for the 2024 for the IR related section. ठीक है? I hope what things we have discussed is clear to you. See, in the answer writing, it is very important in order to arrange the thought process, even write in the limited manner, but at the same time substantiating your argument, and that is going to help you with respect to the answer writing. ठीक है, चलो, so thank you everyone, have a great day, we'll meet again, thank you.